Hello everyone. In this video session, I am going to explain part 194 of Java for Tester series, that is checked and unchecked exceptions. So, exceptions. Exceptions in Java can be categorized into two types, that is checked exceptions and other one is unchecked exceptions. Checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. So what are checked exceptions and what are unchecked exceptions? Let me explain. So let's start with the unchecked exceptions, guys. So what are unchecked exceptions? So unchecked exceptions are the exceptions, okay, which can be only identified during the execution. Okay, when you execute the program, on executing the program, you find out that there is a particular exception in the code. Okay, such kind of exceptions are known as unchecked exceptions. Okay, here compiler won't be able to find these exceptions. Only when you run the program, you will come to know that there is some exception in the code. Okay, but the compiler will not be able to identify before executing the code. The compiler will not be able to identify and give some compiler error. There will not be any compiler error in this kind of case, guys, because compiler will not be able to identify the unchecked exceptions. You can only identify the unchecked exceptions on execution. That is during the runtime only. During the runtime only, these exceptions will be identified. Okay, fine. Since these exceptions are kind of identified during the runtime, okay, we can also call this unchecked exceptions as runtime exceptions. Okay, there is another name for this unchecked exceptions, guys. We can also call this unchecked exceptions as runtime exceptions because these exceptions are generally identified during the execution. Okay, so we'll come to know that there is an exception in the code only after running the program. Before running the program, our compiler will not help us in identifying them. Such exceptions are known as unchecked exceptions or runtime exceptions. Let me give an example for this unchecked exceptions, guys. Fine. So I'll write a statement like this. Int a is equal to 10 by 0. Okay. Did we get any compiler error here in this particular statement? Did we get any compiler error, guys? I didn't get any compiler error. So if I run this program, right click, run as Java application, but in the output, during the execution, I got this runtime exception. And the name of this runtime exception is arithmetic exception, right? We got this unchecked exception known as arithmetic exception during the runtime. Okay. So such kind of exceptions are known as such kind of exceptions. The example here is arithmetic exception. So here, unchecked exception, one example for unchecked exception is arithmetic exception. Okay. Any other example for this unchecked exceptions, guys, which can only be identified during the execution or runtime? Another example is array index out of bounds exception. For example, if I create an integer array here, int a is equal to new int of sum 2. Okay. But if I try to assign array index 5, a of 5 with some value 9, okay, like this. If I try to assign something like this, so what will happen here, guys? Am I getting any compiler error? No, I am not getting any compiler error. But when I run this program, I am going to get an exception. During the runtime only, this kind of exception will be identified. Okay. So there is a problem in the code. Such kind of problem or error in the code is identified during the runtime. During the execution only, we are able to find the problem. The problem here is array index out of bounds exception. Okay. The reason here is 5. You are assigning a value of 9 to an array at the index 5. But this particular array has a size of only 2. But you are assigning at the index 5, which is not possible. Okay. Up to index 0, a of 0 and a of 1 is possible because size is 2 here. But here you are assigning a of 5 is equal to 9. It is not possible. That's the reason we got this array index out of bounds exception. But here, guys, the thing that we have to focus here is our compiler has not identified this exception in advance, right? We didn't get any compiler error while writing this code. But when I run this program, I got this array index out of bounds exception. So such kind of exceptions which are identified during the execution of the program, okay, that is during the runtime, are known as unchecked exceptions or runtime exceptions. Okay. So another example for this unchecked exception is array index out of bounds exception. Okay, array index out of bounds exception. So there may be more exceptions. Okay, under this unchecked exceptions. The main examples I gave here are arithmetic exception and array index out of bounds exception. Apart from this, there may be other type of exceptions that can be identified during the runtime only. Okay, fine. So guys, now coming to the other type of exceptions, that is checked exceptions. Okay, other type of exceptions is checked exceptions. So what are checked exceptions? So in contrast to this, here these unchecked exceptions are identified during the execution, but checked exceptions are kind of opposite to this unchecked exceptions. That means can be identified, okay, during the compile time itself. So here guys, checked exceptions are the exceptions which can be identified in advance by the compiler, okay, by providing a compiler error. So here we will not find out that the exception is going to happen or not, but our compiler will tell that our compiler, Java compiler will tell that there is a possibility, okay, the exception may or may not come, but there is a possibility of getting a checked exception. Okay, there is a possibility of getting an exception. This only thing will be provided by the compiler guys. Okay, even though the code you have written may not produce any exception in the runtime, but in case of this checked exceptions, the compiler will provide the possibility of getting an exception. Okay, during the compile time itself, we will get an indication by the compiler that there is a possibility in this particular code to raise an exception, okay, to get an exception. Such kind of exceptions, okay, such kind of exceptions where the compiler is giving the possibility of getting an exception, such kind of exceptions are known as checked exceptions. Okay, you don't have to wait, you don't have to execute the program to find out whether there is an exception in the code or not. Before that itself, the compiler will give you the possibility of getting an exception. Okay, this code may or may not result in an exception. Such kind of exceptions where the compiler is giving you the possibility of getting an exception are known as checked exceptions. Let me give an example, guys. So guys, whatever the code I'm going to write here, just ignore that. Okay, I didn't explain such code in the previous videos, but just blindly follow whatever the code I am writing. Okay, because whatever the code I am writing is going to be covered in the upcoming videos. But for now, you have to understand whatever the code I am writing here in the context of checked exceptions only. Okay, you don't have to understand this code, but you have to understand the checked exceptions concept behind it. Fine, let me start doing so. Fine. So before writing any code, what I will do here is I have this location in my system, one of the folder, location folder in my machine. Okay, you can also create any folder in your machine and open it like this. Okay, it can be location folder, it can be ABC folder, anything. Okay, in that folder, create a new file. So I will name this file as some ABC file. Okay, some ABC file. Inside this text file, I'll open it and I'll write some sample text Arun Motori, something like this. Okay, sample text by Arun Motori. Some text I have written inside this file. That's fine. I just created a sample file, guys. Nothing more than that. Okay. In this folder, in one of the folder in my machine, I created a sample text file. That's it. Okay. So here, in order to represent this particular file, Java is providing a predefined class known as file class. Okay. There is a predefined class known as file class. So I will name this as ABC. File ABC is equal to new file. Okay. And here I have to say double quotes. Put the semicolon here. So I'm getting some compiler errors already. Over the mouse on this file and asking you to import the package. This particular file predefined class of Java. File is a predefined class of Java, guys. Okay. Under which package this particular file is available? Java.io. Since this file package is in a different package, file class is in a different package like java.io, we have to import. Okay, I explained in one of the previous videos on the packages. We have to import this particular file predefined class of Java from this java.io package, not to use it. That's fine. So now the compiler errors have been resolved, right? But here I have to represent the file. Okay, this statement is used for representing a file on your computer. On your computer. So I want to represent this particular file known as ABC file on my computer. So how to represent using this file ABC is equal to new file ABC. Okay. So here I have to give the path of this particular file completely. So first I need to copy this path, guys. So here before while I'm copying, as you can see, single slash is there. But when I try to paste here, I will get the double slash. This is the correct format of providing the location, guys. Okay. Whenever you provide some file path in your computer in your Java programs, you have to convert the single slash to double slash. Then only it will work. Okay. Here in your computer, it is single slash. But in the Java programs, when you paste it, Java is automatically converting the proper format. Okay. So if you manually type, you have to make sure that you have to type double slash in place of the single slash, guys. Okay. This single double slash will only work in place of single slash in Java programs. Okay. When you represent a file. For example, after location, have to give ABC dot text file, right? So for that, in order to provide that, I have to say double slash inside the location folder. Instead of single slash, I have to say double slash. Okay. Under this location folder, we have this file. So right click on this file, say properties, and what is the name of the file? ABC. Copy this name of the file and paste it here. And what is the extension of this file? .txt. Okay. .txt. Copy this and paste it here like this. Now, guys, this is a statement for representing one of the file on your machine. Okay. Using the file predefined class in Java, we have represented a file in. Okay, we have represented a file in our computer, on our computer. Fine. Now things are good. Till now, nothing happened, right? Now I'm going to write another statement. Let's say I'm writing some statement known as file reader. Okay, file reader is another predefined class in Java. I will say fr is equal to new file reader. Okay, file reader fr is equal to new file reader. File reader is another predefined class in Java. Hover the mouse on this file reader. You have to import this file reader predefined class from java.io. Okay, so like this. So here we are getting two java.ios. Okay, instead of these two things, we can simply make this to #. This will also work, right? All the classes inside this java.io should be imported. So you don't have to import each and every time. Okay, you get some predefined class from java.io package, right? So single statement that will be done. Still, after resolving this importing problem of this file reader class from java.io package, still we are getting a kind of compiler error here. When you hover the mouse, it says the constructor file reader is undefined. That means here you have to provide this ABC, guys, like this. Okay. So now hover the mouse. Again, we are getting a compiler error. We have resolved the earlier problem where this file reader constructor should be provided with this particular file. This file should be the input for this file reader class. Okay, fine. So hover the mouse and it says unhandled exception type, file not found exception. So here, guys, my compiler is, we are getting a compiler error. Okay, compiler error is giving this kind of thing, guys. Okay, compiler is Java compiler is telling you in this particular statement that, okay, there is a possibility of getting an exception. Okay, this Java compiler here is giving this compiler error saying that there is a possibility of getting an exception here in this kind of statement. That's why this kind of exception, what type of exception you may get? File not found exception. Okay, that's why this file not found exception falls under which category? Checked exception category. Because in case of this file not found exception, the compiler is telling you in advance that there is a possibility of getting an exception. Okay, so so what we have to do then? The compiler is giving a compiler error saying that it's in advance saying that there's a possibility of getting a file not found exception. So I'm not going to allow you, okay, without handling the program. You have to handle it. After running the program, if you get an exception, what you will do, guys? You will try to handle that code, right? Right? In case of unchecked exceptions, okay. So when you run some code and then during the runtime, if you get an exception, what you will do? You'll go to the code and handle it using the try catch blocks. The same thing will happen here, right? The same thing you have to do here. It also says that you have to handle this. There is an unhandled exception which is possible. Okay, it doesn't mean that the exception will come, guys, because if you provide this proper path, if you provide a proper path here, the exception will not come in this statement because this file exists here. But our compiler is just assuming that if in case this file is wrong, this file path is wrong, who knows, right? Who knows this file path is correct? This file may or may not exist at this particular location. It's compiler is thinking in that such kind of terms, and this statement may result in an exception during the runtime. That's why beforehand the compiler is telling you that this particular statement there is a possibility of getting a which kind of exception? File not found exception, because this path may or may not be correct. Compiler is telling you in advance. So it's asking you to handle it. Even after we don't get the exception also, it's asking you to handle it. Okay, fine. So what we have to do, guys? What we have to do in this case? In this case, we have to handle it using the normal try catch block. Okay. So if I say try and then catch, okay. So file not found. There is a possibility of file not found exception, right? Exception some e and e dot. If in case we get an exception, we'll say e dot print stack trace. Okay. This is how we can handle the exception. So if the file path is correct, we'll not get any exception. If we don't get an exception, if the exception is handled proper, if we don't get an exception, what will happen, guys? This catch block will not be executed. If you don't get an exception in this statement, this catch block will not be executed. Instead, the statements followed by this try catch will be executed. That is, let's say after try catch, I'll write something like this for our understanding. Okay. So run this, right click, run as Java application. As you can see that after try catch, because why this statement is coming here, the path provided is correct. We have provided the correct path where this ABC file is there. That particular path we have provided, right? Fine. So this file is there at this provided location, and when this particular statement got executed, it has not resulted in any file not found exception. Has okay, the exception has not been thrown here because this ABC path is correct. Okay, that's why no exception has been thrown. Since there is no exception thrown by this code inside this try block, the catch block will be skipped. It will not be invoked. The catch block will be skipped and the remaining statements will be executed. That's why we got after try catch block. What if I intentionally change this path to XYZ? Do we have this xyz.txt file inside this location folder? No, only ABC is there. What if I change to XYZ? This particular path is not available. In that case, when I run this program, right click run as Java application, you see we got an exception. Okay, here we have said e.print stack trace. That's why all the details got printed here. Otherwise, if you want to say only something like the system dot okay out.println exception got handled. I want to print normal statement like instead of e.print stack trace, if I do something like exception got handled, if I run right click run as Java application, only that exception got handled will be printed. Okay, so that means that here the path is wrong. Since the path is wrong, this particular statement will result in an exception, right? That is nothing but file not found exception, and this catch block will handle that. When the catch block is involved because of this exception thrown in this particular try block statement, the statement inside the catch block will be executed. That is exception got handled will be printed here. Since the exception got handled, the statements following the exception handled exception will be printed. That is after try catch will be executed. Okay, the statements following this exception will be executed because we handled the exception. So guys, so this is how we can handle the checked exceptions. Okay, we can handle the checked exceptions something like this. Fine. I have to explain more about how to handle the checked exceptions. Okay, there are different ways we can handle the checked exceptions. Fine. So before going there, let's understand. Okay, let's at a high level, let me explain you that exceptions are of two types. One is checked exceptions, another one is unchecked exceptions, checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. In case of unchecked exceptions, okay, we'll identify the exceptions during the runtime only. Then only we'll find out there's some exception being thrown from the code, right? Before that, compiler will not tell you or hint you or tell you the possibility of getting an exception in the code, right? Or after execution only we'll find out that this particular section of the code is resulting in an exception. But coming to the checked exceptions, okay, in checked exceptions, the compiler will tell you the possibility of getting an exception. The exception may come or may not come, but the compiler will give you a compiler error saying that this particular statement of code may result in an exception. Such kind of exceptions are known as checked exceptions. Okay, such kind of exceptions are known as checked exceptions. So that's about the checked and unchecked exceptions, guys. And there is more that I have to explain as part of checked and unchecked exceptions in detail. Okay, so that's it about this session. And in the next video session, I'll explain how to handle the checked exceptions. Okay, I'll explain how to handle the checked exceptions in detail. Fine. So that's it, guys. See you in the next video session where I'll be explaining how to handle the checked exceptions, where the compiler will tell you the possibility of getting an exception in detail. So that's it, guys. See you in the next video session. Thank you. Bye.